Awesome, huh? So maybe while this is coming up, I'll just kind of explain what we're going to do a little bit. I was talking with Kristy, and we're trying to decide how we're going to do this, and we're going to do this a little non-traditionally. We're going to go back and forth a couple times. So when I'm done, don't clap yet. Then let her come up, and then when we're all done, you can clap. Well, I mean, you don't have to clap, but if you thought it was awesome, then you can clap. But yeah, that's how we're going to go about it today. And so I saw this done once like this, and so here we go. And the reason we want to do this because we're all geeks here, and I love Transformers, but not the newer stuff, so much. I grew up watching this old stuff, and so again, hopefully you guys will appreciate it, even if you're not that familiar with Transformers. But if you are, you're going to love it even more. So we're just going to go ahead and jump into it. And like I said, we're going to go back and forth a little bit, and I'm going to give you start off with some stats and just some information about visual content. And Kristy's going to jump into some amazingly awesome, horrible examples, and you're going to love it. It's going to be fun, and then we're going to give you tools and good examples and all that stuff. So let's just jump into it. Now, did you hear that? We got to do that again. You can't hear it. Anyway, so these are the platforms that brands are using. And again, a lot of the stuff that we do in our company is a lot of the visual content, a lot of the visual, again, we're going to get into all this stuff, but a lot of times when we're working with new brands, some of the biggest questions that we get are like, well, what should we be using? Should we be on Pinterest? Should we be on Instagram? Should we be doing this? What should we be doing? And so that's why I wanted to get into a lot of this stuff, to help you guys get a better understanding and how you can create content, how you can repurpose content, how you can use it to your benefit. And so there is more than meets the eye to the visuals. Did you see the eyes there? Oh, they're supposed to be glowing. I don't know. Anyway. Well, they were blinking, but anyway. So we're very visual type people. The way that we process images, all of the information that are, it's one of those things where, and again, I don't have any examples on this one, but if you have a big old long page of just data and information versus like a beautiful visual of it, what's your eye is going to be drawn to? What are you going to be more inclined to go to? It's that visual stuff, and that's why a lot of this that we're talking about and what we're going to be getting into and why we want you guys to start embracing this, because, and again, a lot of people are, but the visual side of it is so important, and a lot of these numbers are just for you guys to get the point of it. And so, again, more numbers. Post with visuals. This is the one that we've seen. Again, 94% more page visits and engagement. Can't talk. So again, just wanted to really get into these stats and help you guys have this. And again, we're going to have this presentation for you to download. And the one that I like on the stat that I like on this one is just the interaction. Okay, like on all the stuff that we do, whenever we do, and again, it can be anything simple. It doesn't have to be like some of the examples that we're going to give you are content examples that cost thousands of dollars to create. But then there's those that cost nothing to create. It's just a simple meme creator. And so again, we're going to jump into all that. But the point is to be doing it. So this trend is visual, okay? And I love using this as an example because, again, with all the stuff, I don't know, someone challenged me to use the llamas on the run in Phoenix yesterday. I didn't have enough time to get it into the presentation. But again, that's the perfect example of brands being on top of stuff like that, taking those images and making memes out of them, making content out of them, creating stories out of them, doing stuff like that. And again, I just like these ones with the iPhone because if you guys remember when all that was going down with the iPhone 6 and the Bing Gate and stuff like that, all of this was being talked about, and these brands were jumping on it, and some did fabulous jobs. Like I love the Kit Kat one. We don't bend, we break. And anyway. So let's talk about the different types of visual content. Now this is the one that Kristy did approve, just because I think Tom Brady's kind of making fun of himself a little bit, or you can take it. I don't know if you can read it, but I'm not going to read it here. In fact, one that I had originally wanted to put on there was even funnier, but we'll just leave that up to the imagination. But there are different types of visual content, okay? There are those simple memes that get retweeted thousands, hundreds of thousands of times. There's great infographics, videos, white papers, interactives. These are all the kinds of content that our company creates as well. And so it's interesting for us because we can see, the engagement and what happens. And so, there's a lot of that. On that side of it, I think that Kristy's going to jump into as well with showing you some horrible examples, which are pretty awesome. But just giving you an example, like with this evolution of the electric guitar, it was one of the first, and I don't know that I like the word infographic because, back when we were doing these, 8 years ago, there was no term for it, infographic or motion graphic or this or that. We were just putting together visuals with content that we thought was awesome. And that's what we called it. Let's just put together some, really cool visual for this. And so with this evolution of the electric guitar, what we did was, and this was one of the first huge success ones that we had because when we created it, we said, at first it didn't have the 2008 on there. It's an Xbox controller. Because we were thinking, okay, well, let's be pure and let's do a true evolution of the electric guitar. But then we thought, okay, well, we're going to bring some controversy into this, something to get the discussion going. And it actually worked really well. You had the gamers that got in there, and they loved that we included it on there because they're like, yeah, that's good that you put that on there because that's what it's evolved to. But then the purists were like, I want this poster. I want it on a shirt, but just take that part off. I hate it. And so they got going back and forth at each other. So we created the kind of content that got shared, got a discussion going, and got people talking about it, and that was really awesome. So, and I'm going to talk about some specific networks, okay, and give you some examples here. Again, I'm not going to go over any of these stats. You guys can look at them and tweet them out, do whatever you want with them. Just have them for your information, but just giving you my take on how you can use some of these visuals. And again, we'll get into some better case studies. But like with Instagram, here's a couple great examples. Like, I'm from Phoenix, and so I follow one of the digital marketer guy for the Phoenix Suns. His name is Jeremy McPeak, and he's a good friend of mine. But I follow him because their group does such a fantastic job with their digital media. And one of the things that I always use an example because I think it's awesome is something that they put out for St. Patrick's Day. One of their players with the last name Green, did you forget your green today? And they just posted on there, and it just got retweeted like crazy. They make it look like a cutout that you can do. And then there's ones that I've seen for Valentine's that, hey, just print this out, and this will be your Valentine's. And anyway, just fun stuff like that. And another one that's killing it in our area, and the whole truck food craze. Did it start here? You guys claim it? Anyway, we're starting to get those a lot more in Phoenix area, and these guys do a fantastic job because they're on Instagram and they have a following that's like no others, and they're always posting out where they're going to be, locations, deals of the day. You're wanting to follow them. In fact, maybe you don't want to follow them if you're trying to lose weight, but my wife had to stop following them because she's like, I just want to go every time I see where they're going to be close, and I want these waffles, and so I had to stop following them. So it works. Again, with Pinterest, funny story with Pinterest, and I don't know how many of you have heard this, that have heard me talk about it before, but a neighbor of mine, when I used to live in Utah, this was back in like 2005 or so, 2004, he had refused a job from Google, and he told me, I accepted a job with a new startup, and it's called Pinterest. And I'm going to move to San Francisco. And I'm like, oh, cool, that's all right. And so he went over there, and he gave me access to it, like when it was first out. And so I've been using it for a long time. And it was funny because I'd been using it for probably about 8 or 9 months. And my wife found out, and she literally punched me when she found out that I had it because she had been waiting to get invited to. If you remember back when they were, when they were inviting you and stuff, like she punched me because she's like, you've had it for almost a year and you didn't invite me. And so I knew that these guys were onto something. But again, it's the whole visual side of it. If you don't have any kind of a visual plan in place, you're not gonna go very far with Pinterest. So again, just more examples of Pinterest. So just moving along. One thing that you guys may not know is the pin it button has now overtaken Facebook like buttons and Twitter's tweet button on brand product pages. And so this is huge. You got to like the the pen, Optimus punching. I think, is that Megatron or Starscream? Anyway, can't remember. It's been a long 20 plus years since I've watched that. Again, with Facebook, you see more about, and I'll give you, there's some here on this next slide. This is more just for your information, because we're always asked all the time, like, what are the different sizes? Like, what are the proper sizes? How can I use this? But the point here is, again, if you're a brand and you're just out there putting an update that's like, come and visit us today, we got a party going on. I mean, that's boring compared to some kind of visual that like visualizes it and shows you like how exciting it's going to be, or what it's going to be doing, or what it can do for you. So again, just bringing those visuals into it. And again, I'm sure you guys have seen on Twitter how a lot more of your feed is being full of images, where it's a big difference from where it was several years ago, even just a couple of years ago, where only every once in a while there was an image. And so, what does this mean for you? Okay, so obviously if you're pimping out infographics or this or that, those big old long things aren't going to fit. So this is where you start to be creative, and you say, okay, well, how can I repurpose this? I got this really awesome infographic that I want to put out there, but let me repurpose a little part of it that is big enough to just fit in the area that Twitter gives me. Let me share that. Let me link to the full post. And so again, it's just more opportunity for you to create more content. And again, just being more visual, getting more engagement is what we're going for here. And so, should we even talk about Google? Yes, we should. I actually have a couple communities, and one of the communities that I have is a data visualization one, and believe it or not, there's a lot of really good interaction on it. There's a lot of spam too, but there's a lot of good interaction on it, and we actually get a lot of business from it because people, see what we do. And it's not a huge group. I mean, we got over 1,000, but just because we're a part of it and we post what we think is good visually, we post or we encourage other people to post what they think is a great visual and why they think it's a great visual. It's done a lot for us, and it's a neat little community. So, I mean, I like it even for those aspects. And all right, moving on. All right, we're going to let Kristy jump in here now. Yes, high five. Tag team.
So I could stand up here and talk a lot about what makes good content, but Matt's actually going to handle that part. We're going to start with what makes really bad content, and I was kind of fighting him over this because I think it's way more fun to poke fun at other people's mistakes. But I do want to talk a little bit, real briefly before Matt jumps in, about what does make good content. So some of the things we're looking for is content that harmonizes with the brand voice, right? We want content that doesn't feel like content, like marketing content, advertising content. We want it to feel good, right? We want it to feel the same way as your brand experience. So your brand experience is the promise you're making, and the content that you create, that you're putting out there on channels for people to interact with, is how you're fulfilling that brand promise. Okay. I don't even know if we need to say this at this point, but I'm going to because I still see this. If you're not BuzzFeed or you're not Upworthy, please stop doing this. Please stop with these sensational headlines. They kind of, well, I'm not even going to say they absolutely work for them, but I think the rest of us are above this at this point. I think that consumers have started to fatigue with this type of content and this type of tactic. So I challenge you all, if you're doing this, please stop. Please be better than this. Do better, be better. It will work, but I do think that you'll start to see some fatigue. So this is by far the biggest and first tactic that I want to stop seeing us use. Did anybody see this campaign floating around? So you get it, right? I mean, I don't know that we necessarily need to spend a lot of time talking about why this is maybe not a best practice. I get what they were doing, right? With any risk, like we know from the Super Bowl, Matt, thank you, there can be a victory and there can be a loss. In this case, their risk didn't exactly pay off. It was perhaps funny. I don't know who was in the room when they made this decision, but they ran with it. It didn't work. They ended up having to pull it. Obviously, it was initially targeted at a very specific audience, and they were trying to correct a very specific behavior. And maybe they went a little bit too far. So again, take risks, don't be afraid to take risks, but just be careful. And stay away from the locker room humor unless you are, in fact, a locker room. So this ad, I don't have the ad itself because it was a video, it was a commercial, and I didn't think it warranted time to play it, because if you watch the Super Bowl, I'm sorry for all the football references. Still very soon and new.
Ouch.
So did everybody see the GoDaddy Super Bowl commercial? Show of hands. Did anybody not see it? Okay, so real briefly, they kind of did a play on the puppies, the Budweiser puppies that everybody knows and loves. Like, oh my God, I love that commercial. I just turned into such a little baby. I cried. But this one kind of had the opposite effect, right? So they did this whole commercial. They kind of played on that puppy theme. At the end of the commercial, it turns out this lost puppy was actually going to get sold, puppy mill style. As you can probably imagine, a lot of people did not appreciate that particular concept. 42,000 people ended up signing the petition to have the ad removed. So again, risks are good, but think very carefully and very critically about the risk that you're actually assuming. Are you ready to actually do this? This was a Super Bowl commercial. There was certainly quite a few dollars spent on producing it. Luckily for them, they had another commercial in their back pocket that they were able to slip into that slot. So, you know, we could talk about whether or not they kind of did this knowingly or not, and I don't care to pontificate on that. But regardless, there was a lot of money and dollars invested in this, and all they ended up doing was pissing off 42,000 people. I have no idea what is going on here.
I wish I could have taken a picture of their face. That would have been epic.
So I don't know how many of you were in, there was a content session earlier, not in this room, a different room. My friend Dana was talking, and I was in here. The content in here was amazing also, but I did see a couple tweets from Dana's presentation, and she was talking about KPIs. So I think it's important to remember that when you are looking at content and creating content, that it really depends on what your objectives are. So your business objectives are driving what your content is. I have no idea what objective they are shooting for here. So this ad originally ran in Israel only. So maybe there is an initiative in Israel market to increase edginess. I'm not sure. It certainly does not make me want to eat pizza. So I do put that caveat, right? Like your objectives are going to drive. So maybe they had a really good objective and this was spot on. So take my opinion for what it's worth. I just think this is horrible. The next one. So this one is a Denny's tweet. Does anybody watch Scandal? Have you ever seen Olivia Pope eat bacon in that show? Ever? Does she drink wine? Vast quantities of wine. So maybe if I were a wine brand, this would have been a great appropriation of the show, right? But Denny's, bacon in a suit, it's not even a white suit. If anybody watches the show, Olivia Pope wears white. She doesn't even wear black. So, I mean, they didn't even do it right. So be careful when you're appropriating. It's really fun and tempting for brands to want to jump in on some of these things that are happening in pop culture and in society at large, but it's really easy to just not get it quite right as well. So speaking of appropriation, this is a little guy I found on Instagram on Martin Luther King Day, obviously. I'm really not quite sure what capri pants have to do with Martin Luther King. Maybe he did yoga. I don't know. But come on, really? Martin Luther King Day? Like, I think we can be better than this. I think there are ways to celebrate these cultural moments that we all share that don't necessarily involve 40% off capris. I think we can do better. I'm not even certain how to exactly talk about how bad this example is. If you're going to appropriate something and you're going to participate in a larger conversation, I would highly advise against making rape jokes. They're never funny, ever, specifically not in this case. So Whisper is an app that is a lot like Secret, the Secret app. It allows people to go on and anonymously post secrets in case you were curious in what exactly is happening here. I'm just going to move on. I'm sure a lot of you actually saw this one as well. This is an unfortunate example because I can actually see how this happened. I've been in those rooms where people have ideas and there's a lot of other people that are going, oh yeah, I like it, it fits with their brand image, it's kind of catchy, it's pithy. But ultimately, when you're participating in a conversation of this magnitude and you're participating in an environment that is kind of touchy and has this much political charge against it, you have to be very careful, overly careful on how you're participating in that conversation. They were lambasted in social. This ad originally aired, I believe, only in the UK, but it got global coverage for the negative tone of the message that it was portraying. Obviously, they eventually pulled that as well. So I don't know how many of you saw this one also, but I think there's something to be said for matching your medium and your media to your brand voice. I'm not even going to get into John Boehner's politics because it's not really important, but I will say that John Boehner and Taylor Swift gifts don't exactly scream synergy to me. So I actually feel really horrible putting this graphic in here because I love our King 5. It's a local Seattle news station. I love the people behind the brand. They do a really good job, but I cannot stand clicking on their links because they all, when I'm on mobile, lead me to a site that looks like this. It's horrible. Your experience with the content is just as important as the content itself. If I have a negative reaction every time I land on your website on my phone, guess what I'm going to stop doing? Going there. This is horrible. We all can pontificate, and I'm sure other people are covering this in their topics as well, as the importance of a mobile experience to your search rankings, your customer experience, all of these things. So just consider the medium and consider how you're delivering the content when you're promoting it on social, especially when you're driving people via Twitter, who many people are largely mobile on that channel. Consider their experience when they land there. So this is not initially obvious why this is horrible. They email me a couple times a week, I suppose. I shop there a lot. I buy a lot of my running gear. I'm training for triathlon, so I'm spending an ungodly amount on training crap. I don't have kids. I've never bought anything for kids. I've never bought anything for baseball. I don't even really like baseball. I only go because they serve beer and you get to sit in the sun. So the fact that I got this email, not only did I get this email, I got this email 3 times. Target your customer. They know who I am. They know what I buy. They know what I'm interested in. Do better than this. I unsubscribed after the 3rd time. I don't even know why it took me 3 times. I guess I kind of hoped maybe it was a mistake. But do better. Be better. Use the data that you have available to you to improve your content and to inform the content decisions that you're making. This was a tweet that was sent out around the Super Bowl. I checked the hashtag period cravings, by the way, because I wanted to see, maybe I'm just really out of touch with how women talk about their monthly dramas online. Kotex is the only account using this hashtag. Perhaps unsurprisingly, I was actually very glad to see that. What's unfortunate about this is when you are promoting content and creating content and trying to create a brand voice that doesn't match with your consumer, what happens is it falls flat and it feels incredibly awkward. This is uncomfortable to read. It's uncomfortable to respond to. And from what I can gather, most people don't actually talk about this particular issue on this particular channel in this particular way. So don't do that. This leads right into this particular tweet. So I'm not going to stand up here and say that using the word bae, I don't even know if I know how to use it. I do think there's a time and a place for brands to appropriate cultural shifts in language if they match and it makes sense. Perhaps for A&W, this actually made sense. Maybe they're trying to target a younger demographic. It is a little bit of an older brand. Far be it for me to judge, but I do want to bring this up because I see a lot. There's actually a Twitter account called Brands Using the Word Bay, I think. And they just retweet. Staples is guilty, A&W is guilty. Again, maybe it makes sense for them, but for me, as a content consumer, again, I'm way too old to use this word, but it feels uncomfortable and it doesn't make a lot of sense. What in the heck does that word have anything to do with root beer? This is another one. It's all about targeting and knowing your audience. Somebody paid money to show this ad to me on Twitter. I don't eat donuts. I'm not a MasterCard customer. I don't tweet about MasterCard. I live in Seattle. I haven't been to New York in 2 years now. So somebody actually paid money to show me this, and I'm really confused as to why. There's no rhyme or reason behind it. If you're going to target consumers, do it appropriately, use your data, use what you know about them, use these tools, use that information. Otherwise, you're wasting money, unless you just want to be featured in the bad content examples presentation at SearchFest. Again, with how you present your message, initially, this is not a glaringly bad example of content, except for the errant timing. This tweet actually was sent the day after, the day that the moment of silence was supposed to take place. So automation fail, right? So think about how you're actually pushing your content out there and how you're actually delivering your message, because these things happen all the time. As we see in this example, again, Matt used this as an example of a good content, and I think actually it's pretty clever. It's funny. It does play on a cultural moment that we all kind of experience together. However, it was sent from an iPhone. So it kind of the snark falls a little flat when you look into the details. If you don't have all your bases covered, when you're taking a risk, like being funny and kind of biting against somebody else, if you don't have all your bases covered, you're just going to embarrass yourself. And with that, I'm actually going to hand it back over to Matt.
All right, so let's talk about some good examples, but those were pretty awesome bad examples, I think. All right, so again, with a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be showing you, again, I'm just going to go through these really quick, but becoming a better writer, this hits dead on to a lot of the stuff that you were saying, and knowing your audience and making sure you understand what the buzz is about, leveraging what you have, and the thing that I like with giving them a window into your inner workings is this is where if you are a company like Joanna was talking about, there's a lot of internal data that you have, and a lot of the stuff that you guys that Porch is doing comes from this internal data. Well, this is where you can give people insights into that, and this is what you produce content that comes from that kind of data. It's better than anything you can go and try to scrape or find or anything like that. So this is funny because forever on the Newsjack part of it, I use this picture of Brian Williams. Now that's a whole joke in and of itself now. Then obviously think like a journalist. But we're going to be getting into a lot of these. So brands have caught on, and although we saw a lot of brands failing, there are a lot of brands that are doing well. I mean, who here just loves the Old Spice stuff that they put out? I mean, those guys are awesome. But again, think about, and again, I'm not sharing all these, but like Coca-Cola, and there's other ones that do a really good job of portraying this lifestyle, portraying an image. Okay, so it's not just use this product or drink this Coke or whatever. It's about the lifestyle surrounded that, and so that's what you got to think about. The other thing that I love is how celebrities have caught on and become such great marketers. These are two great. I don't know if you followed the YM single one, but that one was hilarious. And then John Oliver, he did a great bit about the whole Miss America pageant thing, and that was pretty awesome. If you guys haven't heard of any of these ones, definitely go look them up. But they got so much play, and they were so great. But again, this comes from the reason I put these on here, and I just kind of switched it up. But the one that I love the most is when Jimmy Kimmel basically trolled the entire world with his Sochi video. Who remembers that? The wolf video. You guys remember there was a video of a wolf going through the Russian hotels, and it was on every newspaper, every news station. They were reporting about this wolf that had gone through, and they weren't ready, and all these hotels aren't ready. If you remember that in the Olympics, all the reporting that was going on, but it was like every news story for several days, and then he finally let the world know that, hey, I created that video, and I just owned you all. And so these guys have caught on, and it's fun watching and seeing what they do. But all right, so let's get into some specific examples. And so I don't know how many were here 3 years ago when we first rolled this graphic out. We got one. One was two. All right, 3, 4. Okay, all at once. Come on now. But we first pushed this out at a Search Fest, like I said, 3 years ago, and I'd like to think that a lot of its success and a lot of the stuff that we've done as a company, because we were a different brand before we started Avalanche Media, but I'd like to think a lot of the success came from what we did pushing this out here and how you guys all shared it, at least everybody at the time. But we put this out because it was something that we're always being asked, like, how do I use these different social networks? And I was actually really ticked off at Yelp. Is there any Yelp representatives in the room? I don't want to get into any Twitter wars today. But I was really mad at Yelp at the time, and I was thinking, I'm like, what can I, like, it was really just bugging me. And so the thing that kept coming to my mind was Grumpy Cat, because I was really grumpy. And I was like, well, what could he say that would make fun of Yelp? And I was like, I freaking hate this cat food, And so that was kind of like where this whole thing started for me. And then I started thinking, okay, well, I can add all these other brands and pair them with funny internet famous cats and stuff. And what it did since we launched, and again, this was 3 years ago, hundreds of thousands of shares, thousands of links built. It has generated thousands of dollars in revenue, people wanting to either buy the rights to it or use it or put it on a poster. And the most recent one, again, this just happened a couple weeks ago. And again, this is 3 weeks later. And so I'm trying to talk to you about the kind of content that you create that's evergreen, that people are wanting to continue to share. But just a couple weeks ago, we found out that this textbook company wanted to publish it, and they're going to put it in over 80,000 of their textbooks, and we get credit and everything like that. And so it was pretty big deal for us. Pretty awesome that it's going to be in front of that many people, even 3 years later from when we first put it out. So again, I just wanted to thank SearchFest for that. So, whoops, too fast. So again, when you're talking about the repurposing, what did that do for us? Okay, so we found that it connected with people. And again, we're going to get to how does this kind of stuff have to do with like our brand and whatnot. Obviously the cat's explaining social media. A lot of what we do is social media, so it worked. But we created an ebook out of it where we could go a little harder after leads. Okay, so that the graphic, it's just for fun for people to share and stuff like that. But then we dove into each one of the different specific networks and talked about how brands could specifically use LinkedIn. Gave them more information, how they could use Pinterest. So again, we took that original idea and expanded on it, and we've gotten a ton of leads from this. People, we give them this download. They can download it for free. But again, we figured, hey, it resonated with people. Let's continue to repurpose it. We created a motion graphic out of it, slide shares. Again, you're just hitting a certain audience that there may be someone on SlideShare that just uses SlideShare all the time that never really saw it shared on all the other networks when it was in its original form. And so you have to remember that kind of stuff. And so what all that led to more recently was this graphic that we did called the Periodic Table of Internet Famous Cats. And this is an interactive one that we did, and we wanted to do it because, again, like a lot of the success we've had has come from just having fun with cats and, this kind of fun, creative content. But, and I'm not saying that you have to get into cats. In fact, the jokes that I get about it, I almost wish you don't do that. But, hey, it's done well for us. And, we have fun with it. But we actually saw this content was put out by Friskies, and I think I give a slide share of it, but it was pretty boring the way that they presented it. And so we thought we'd have a more fun, interactive version of it. And so we put it out there, and wait for it, the results were out of this world. So let's talk about some of, so the SPCA, obviously the big rescue groups and advocate, there was tons of people like that retweeted it out and loved it, because what we did is we did our research, and we figured out that of the 50 cats, like I think 47 of them or something were actually rescue cats. They weren't like, just someone's cat that I don't know how you regularly get a cat, but not everybody rescues cats, but you see what I'm saying. Let's just move on. So, Andy Bill, if any of you guys know him, founder of Tracker and editor of Marketing Pilgrim, and a new one that he's doing, Reputation Refinery, good friend of mine. Again, you get an influencer like him that has thousands and like hundreds, or I don't know how many he has, but he has got a lot of followers. You get someone like that tweeting it out. I had to throw Kristy in here because she liked it. But again, just what people were saying about it, and so again, going through some more of this. We had some fun with it. This was cool because these guys actually loved what we did with it, and they contacted us about a lot of stuff. They wrote all kinds of articles about it, and we probably got most of our mentions from this cat right here, but we even got some good stuff from Grumpy Cat too, which was really fun. You want to impress I have a 14-year-old daughter who is always trying to tell me that I'm using Instagram wrong. But, okay, how do you get your bills paid there, girl? But she was so impressed when I showed her that Grumpy Cat followed me. She was just blown away. So again, just getting more into, and we had fun with this. Like, how hard it was to find a Transformer dog for this slide. But, even we had dog rescue places tweet stuff out. And again, it's just the mentions. But what does that do for my business? So we created that. We get all these mentions, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's Pinterest, whether it's a write-up or whatever. But the point is they're saying, check out this infographic, and then they're linking to Avalanche Media or our company, which, if it's a motion graphic or a video that we created or an interactive graphic or whatever, most of the time they're putting those references together and they're talking about our company. Again, the same thing with how they pin it, and this is an interactive and it's got our name in it. And so this was what the original one from Friskies looked like. So it was a lot less, visual. Ours was a lot funner. It brought up baseball card type things like that. So again, transforming the content that you already have. We don't really need to get into this. I think you've kind of seen a bunch of good examples. And like I said, this will be available for download. So we worked with Quicksilver, and they had these pair of shorts that they wanted to sell, and they weren't selling very well. And so what we had their team do was, what are your most frequently asked questions? What are the people that are asking you the most about this? And so then what we would do is, again, we created visuals for them that they ended up turning into hang tags that they put on the shorts. They put them, regular visuals right there on the products themselves, and it helped them start selling the products a lot more. But it just came from figuring out what their problem was. They wanted to sell this, but they didn't know how to sell it to people, and so we helped them figure out how to sell it to people. And that's an offline example, but ADP. And again, I want to have enough time for Kristy to do a lot of these because there's some cool tools she's going to be talking about. And you can go back and see these case studies anytime you want. But ADP, again, like it says here, they had salespeople that didn't have a very good tool set for all their or to be able to sell them very well. And so what we did was we created a series of content, whether it was infographics or sales pages or white papers, videos that they can direct people to. And again, you see the flow chart here. Measured each graphic's popularity by polling people on social media, and then we repurposed their more successful content and created the material that they needed to have their sales increased. All right. So again, just more of an overview here. I can never say this right. Is there any Jewish people here? So how do I say this? Haggadah? Haggadah, thank you. I'm always saying it wrong. I apologize. But these guys, Jewish Boston, came to us because they said their younger generation wasn't as engaged as they wanted them to be. And so we helped them create an infographic, an app, an ebook, whatever way that the generation today is wanting to be engaged. And again, just more of this information. But here's the results. 20,000 plus app downloads. Again, this is something that blew them away just because of the interaction that they were getting. But even besides just them they wanted this material in front of the younger people, the other stuff that I missed a slide. But what it did was they got in mentions from like Bostonia, the Washington Times. I mean, just huge places picked it up, talking about it, tweeting about it. So they got like that benefit of it as well. And so, with that said, on to tools.
I'm going to fall on this cord. Have your cameras ready. So thanks, Matt. Those were some really good examples of different case studies, and of course we went over some good and some bad examples of content. What I'm going to go through now is a litany of tools that I've used in my travels. I tend to think of tools in terms of the problems that they're trying to solve. So when I think about content specifically, I think about it in some of these larger buckets, right? So how do we measure social, whether it's Twitter, Pinterest, what have you? How are we measuring our performance and our engagement that we're seeing there? How are we finding our influencers, right? Like to Joanna's presentation earlier, how are we finding these great people that can go out there and are doing the marketing for us? How do we find them? How do we activate them? And how do we maintain those relationships? How do we learn from social? I think one of the neatest uses of social is actually learning about our customers, learning about, again, to Joanna's presentation earlier, if you weren't in here, she talked a lot about how through listening, you can actually learn how your consumers talk about your product, right? You talk about your product in one way, and the likelihood is that they are talking about your product and their experience with that product in a completely different way. So how can you leverage a tool to gather that social media data, to pull those insights out, to figure out how they're talking about your brand and their experience with your brand, and what some of their problems might be? All the way through content creation, production, and curation, right? How do we actually build out this stuff? How do we build an infographic with cats and stuff? How do we curate? How do we scale some of that, right? How do we leverage the content that's already out there to build up our own platform? So I'm going to give you a bunch of tools that fit into these, I guess there are 5 buckets. At the end, just so you know, if you see something you like, there's a link bundle, so don't feel like you need to scramble to write down all of these names. I didn't necessarily include URLs on the slides, so just know that at the very end there is going to be a link bundle so you can capture that, and obviously the slides you'll have access to as well. So I'm going to go through these kind of quickly. Just know that you don't have to try to keep up if you don't really want to. So the first tool that I like to include, it's probably my go-to favorite social media tool because it does so many different things. Right now I'm putting it in the social media measurement bucket, but Simply Measured is an amazing tool for a lot of different uses. It actually cuts across several of these buckets. One of the things that it does really well is social media measurement. You can plug in your accounts, your competitors' accounts, and especially for people who have smaller teams who don't necessarily have body count on body count to produce reports and share back to leadership, which is obviously very important. This tool spits out a lot of reports that are PowerPoint ready. You can actually upload your own PowerPoint deck to the tool and then download the report on your own deck. So I think that's kind of cool, especially for those of you who have smaller teams, like I said. SumAll is another one. This one measures your social accounts. It's pretty high level. But it is free, so I like to include free tools. Simply Measured as a counterpoint is not actually free. They do have a host of free tools, or free reports, I'm sorry, that you can pull, but a lot of theirs is behind an account page. This one, however, is free. It's very high level. The thing I love about this particular tool is there are more platforms on their tool that they report on than I've ever even heard of. Some of these I was like, what is that? And what am I missing out on? So if you have a presence on a platform, likely they can help you measure it. Brand24 is another one that I like because of the flexible pricing model. So it really scales to fit really small businesses all the way through really large enterprise clients. If you're dealing at that volume, they do listening and measurement at both the account and keyword level. So it's actually really helpful for that because you can report on how you're doing, but you can also look at it from a conversation lens and see how people are talking about what they're talking about, and maybe what are some of those tangential languages that they're using to talk about your brand that you don't necessarily have awareness or visibility into. When we start talking about influencer discovery, this is kind of a hard one because I think a common, I don't want to call it a mistake, but a common maybe misdirection that I see is the confusion of an influencer and the confusion of an advocate. So when we're thinking about influencers, we're thinking about people that are having some kind of a power over a target audience. So your influencers are people that your audience is listening to. That is different than an advocate. Advocates are incredibly important as well, but advocates are people that are going out there advocating on your behalf, and maybe they're customers, maybe they're not, but those are very different people. So I think that's a really valuable place that maybe we're not always paying attention to. A tool like Tracker can actually help you do that. And the thing that I love about this one that makes that got them the ticket to ride on this particular deck is they actually help you manage that relationship. So as we all know, managing those relationships with advocates or influencers is very time consuming, and it can be hard to scale, especially across teams. Tools like this can actually help you do that so you don't lose those relationships as you're building them because you're moving on to somebody else potentially. Another powerful influencer discovery tool that I really like is Tap Influence. You can think about this one as a content influencer marketplace, if that makes sense. So you can go in there, you can find these people, you can collaborate with them in the tool, you can work with these people, these content creators, to co-create branded content, to find the people that your people are listening to. And the neat thing about this one is it also helps you, beyond just matching you to potential influencers, it also helps you track and manage your performance on the projects that you're collaborating with these folks on. BuzzSumo, really neat tool. It does a lot of things. It does a ton of things. I've included it here on the influencer discovery. They help you find influencers on topic areas. So if you know what your topic areas are, even your tangential topic areas. One of my favorite examples of this is, back in the olden days, I used to work at gamehouse.com. It was a Real Networks property, and through this kind of effort, what we found was casual gamers, for whatever reason, were also very interested in NASCAR and John Deere. So we were able to, I know, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but casual gamers don't always make a lot of sense. We were able to target the influencers in both of those markets and drive activity and engagement through those tangential markets back to our core audience because we had tools like this that were able to kind of uncover those little hidden pockets of interest. Radian 6, this is going to be, unless you're enterprise, probably out of your budget, unfortunately. It's a really great tool. It is an amazing and powerful social listening tool. You can pull a lot of insights from the channel. You can see sentiment, you can see volume, you can track your competitors and all of this thing. Unfortunately, it's very expensive. Some of its other competitors, places like Crimson Hexagon and that type, they're all very enterprise level. They're also not very user friendly. So you definitely are going to need somebody on a tool like this to become a subject matter expert because it's not a seamless, easy to use tool, but it is incredibly powerful, and I would probably go so far as to say that it's one of the better out there if you're able to invest that level. Another insights discovery tool that is, quite a bit more approachable. This has an engagement dashboard, but it's essentially a list creator for social listening. So you can see I was stalking Mr. Siltala here. Bless you. So it's not as robust as Radian 6, but it's far more approachable, and it has a lower learning curve and a lower price point and all of those things. So this is another really good example as well. And not finally, almost finally, real-time social search with sentiment and keywords. I think that's huge. Learning, again, how your customers are talking about your brand, learning what the pain points they're having. All of these things are things that you can pull out of social media if you're actually listening. Social mention is another one that really helps you figure that out. You can subscribe to a feed, so it makes it very push instead of pull. So I really like that one. And finally, I think probably the most underutilized social tool out there, your inbox and your telephone. Customers are calling you, probably more than you'd like, I'm sure, for some of you, and emailing you with their problems, their issues, their concerns, their troubles. That is incredibly valuable data that you should be leveraging for content creation. What are they asking about? What are their pain points? If you can stop them and provide that content and educate them and empower them with that content before they ever get here, you're looking at an incredible cost deflection that can be in the millions of dollars depending on your size, but at the very least can free up your team to do things more along the lines of engagement and delighting and just generally making their experience better because we've already solved their problems. So this data that you're going to get out of your customer service tools is probably the best tool in this entire deck. And I apologize because it's also probably the most boring slide. If you're actually doing content creation, so now we're beyond what can we learn from the content, what can we learn from these channels, but how can we actually create the content? This is the coolest tool. It makes me wish all of my brands were on WordPress. If you are on WordPress, this is really fun. I've got a screenshot up here. It's essentially a drag and drop rich media content creation tool, which is like every buzzword I could possibly put in one sentence. But that's legit what it does. So it allows you to create these beautiful and dynamic and super engaging multimedia pieces of content simply by dragging and dropping. And if you are as technically averse as I am, I know zero code, this is amazing and you're welcome. Another one, I know Joanna mentioned this earlier, Canva. It's really easy, again, drag and drop style content creator. If you have a design team, awesome. If you don't, again, you're welcome. This is a really powerful tool. You can create PowerPoints, presentations, slide decks, Facebook elements, cover photos, Instagram images, like any type of visual content you can possibly think of. They almost have a template for everything on there. So you can really easily go in there. It's super simple. It's not expensive. Drag and drop and create some really pretty beautiful things with this tool. Another one, this is just a little tool. It's got a very specific purpose, but in a lot of the forums and communities that I'm a part of, I find this is a huge pain point for a lot of content creators, is resizing of images, because all of the different sites have all of these different requirements. So not only does this resize your images very quickly and very easily, it also has, if you scroll down below the screenshot, it has a list of all the different dimensions. So at the very least, it's a useful website to visit if you're curious about what the different sizes are, because folks like Facebook constantly changing up that stuff, so it's not always top of mind. This is another one that's really easy to use. It's called Over. It does exactly what you'd think it would do based on its name, so win for the branding team over there. It literally puts text over images. So all of those really, really popular, easy to share little nuggets of beautiful pictures and catchy little quotes and phrases or what have you, you can create on your phone really quickly, really easily, and share out to all of your channels. So we're getting into content curation that's quite a bit different than content creation, but it's a way to scale your own efforts. You don't have to be creating all of this content by yourself. You can actually just leverage the content that's around you based on whatever the topic is. Storify is a really good example of a content curation tool that helps you do that. So this pulls in posts and updates and allows you to create threads of conversation. So for example, if you had an event, you could use this and pull in content based on your hashtag, your event hashtag, or your brand handle, and easily create a threaded content or piece of content based on that topic. And of course, you can customize it to your heart's content. But it very easily allows you to curate conversations based on that and create a piece of content from that. Another one, not going to get into a ton of detail here because I find this is not the most widely used tool, but it is really helpful if you do a lot of video content curation, or if you want to be doing a lot of video content curation. This is a really good tool for that. Not a lot of people do, but if you did, there's a resource for you. And Trap It, this one's neat. I'm a sucker for puns. You literally create traps based on a keyword or a topic or what have you, and so this helps you trap it, and it goes out into the internet and basically brings you back stuff and puts it in your trap. So it also learns from you, so you can vote, I guess, thumbs up content. So it's constantly learning and optimized based on what's working for you and what's not working for you. So I really like this tool for that reason. And here we go, the link bundle. I saw a lot of you taking notes. Here's the bundle. It has all of the websites for all of those tools that I just mentioned. And in closing, just to wrap up, Sorry. I'll let you guys take a picture of that, write it down. Again, you'll have access to the decks as well. But in closing, just to summarize, basically do all the things that we just told you to do. Stop doing the things that we told you to stop doing. And if you have any questions, come talk to me and Matt later. Thank you.
Wants to be the first victim out there. All right. Over there.
How do you handle copyright issues and potential copyright issues, and knowing what you can share, what you shouldn't share of other people's pictures of their cats, things like that?
You might have a better answer for this than I do, but one of the guys on our team is a lawyer, one of my partners, and so I always just ask him stuff like this, like, "Hey, can we really be doing this?" And his answer has always been the same: as long as you're giving good, you're giving credit to who you're using it, you're sourcing it, you're not like blatantly stealing it. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. This we could have a whole discussion on this about Pinterest too, and some of the stuff that they've had going on. But I always look to him whenever we have ideas like this. Can we do this or whatever? And that's usually what he tells me. And he says if there ever is an issue, we'll take it down or comply or whatever. But I don't really have a better answer than that.
I mean, I guess the only thing I would add is, if in doubt, always consult legal, whether your client's legal team or your own legal team. But also asking goes a long way. Asking permission to share something, especially when we're talking about content curation, right? When you're capturing people's tweets or images that they've already shared, whether it was in your community, a branded community, or on the broader social. I think even if it is perfectly legal to do so, I think asking goes a long way to engender, that relationship and just making sure that people are aware of what you're doing.
And to that point, I'll add. To that point, I mentioned that graphic that we had. The lady had contacted me that wanted to put it in the 80,000 plus textbooks or whatever, and my initial thought is, heck yeah, I'm like excited. Like anytime anyone wants to share, it's just usually when I get mad is when they don't give any kind of attribution or anything like that. And we've been doing this for so long that we gave up years ago trying to go after all the people that have used our stuff, blatantly took out our name and put their logo right over it or things like that. I mean, there's just too numerous for us to go over or to go after. But I think most of the time, you'll find when you're just giving people proper attribution, giving them a link, giving them a shout, whatever it may be. In all the years that I've been doing this, we've never had anyone come after us, and people have just been happy. Because, I mean, that's what they're trying. They put this stuff out there because they want people to share it. They want, for the most part, they want people to share it and get it out there.
Questions?
Matt, can you talk about your ideation process when you guys are in content development? I like that you're reaching out and working with the internal teams and stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about how you illuminate that?
Yeah, ideation is a huge part of it. I mean, the first thing that we always try to do, and again, I'll mention Joanna Lord again, talking about Porch, if you guys were in here. We love working with companies like that have that kind of data. I mean, so when you're going through this whole idea process, you want to get their teams involved because you want to get their feedback and say, okay, we have some ideas that we think would be really funny or really shareable. I mean, I don't like the term going viral anymore. I'd rather have something be shareable. But when we're going through this process, I try to always involve the teams of the people that we're creating this content for, because we have really great ideas a lot of times, we think, and we just want to make sure that the data can back up what our ideas are. And so a lot of times we'll go through our whole team first. We'll run initial ideas through everyone, and then we'll give it back to the client, and then they'll go through and they'll look at it and they'll make sure if there's any legal issues or whatever, and then they'll, a lot of times they'll come back. But so we don't have to do a lot of back and forth, we always try to make sure that before we're solid on an idea that we have some kind of background or some kind of foundation to be able to create that content from.
I would just add real quick too, I think to some of the bad content examples and to even some of Matt's points earlier, and even to my earlier point about asking, I think especially when you're looking at content that's potentially a little bit more risky, ask. Put it in front of your customers, get it in front of them and get their reaction. That's going to tell you whether it's going to land or not, whether it's going to hit a hot button for them, answer a problem, solve a need, all of those different things. Get it in front of them before you publish it, and get feedback and get their opinion and just ask what they think of it. I think that's a great way to, also remove some of the risk from some of those maybe testier content situations, but it also gives you opportunity to have a conversation with folks and open up for potential brainstorming ideas as well.
My question is, when dealing with the ratio of lifestyle versus product, when you're trying to market a brand that sells other brands, sorry, I'm sick, so my voice is gone. I guess we're struggling with just the ratio of how much should be lifestyle versus how much should be product, and how to kind of keep that balance going.
I hate to give this answer to you, but it depends, right? I know that's the least helpful thing that I could possibly say, but it really does, right? It depends on your audience and what they are expecting from you and what they want to see from you. Some brands can get away with all product all the time because that's what their customers are looking for from them. Some people need to do more maybe 70-30, right, where they need to focus more on the lifestyle because it's more about the brand experience rather than it is a product conversation. So it really kind of depends, and I think getting to a place where you intimately know your customers and your audience and you know what they're looking for from you, the answer will kind of it'll show itself at some point, but it really does depend on everybody. I mean, Harley Davidson, lifestyle, right? Maybe Under Armour is more product focused. So their ratios are going to be a lot different. It just totally depends on the audience and what they need.
And it also depends on the network too, because there's a just slipped me, rustic artistry. If you find it on Pinterest. We have done a whole case study on this in other presentations, but she used to be a chef, and then she started creating these boards, just rustic type stuff, and eventually became so big that she's created her own furniture store and has a huge following on Pinterest. But I can't remember the exact stat, but I think it's around on her most popular boards. I think 20% only, it may be less, but about 20% of the stuff she pins is actually from her own stuff. So most of the stuff that she pins that are on these boards that are popular are from other brands and stuff, and it's worked out well for her. But so that's an example of Pinterest. But I think you have to kind of do exactly what Kristy said, but figure out what channel you're on.
More questions? Anyone in the back? Lights that I could barely see because those lights are so bright.
Everyone's like, please don't answer another question. I want to go to lunch.
Going once, going twice, sold. Okay, one more.
Are there some infographic creation? I've seen infographic creation tools out there. Haven't tried any of them. Wondering if you have any suggestions. And that one tool that you talked about for WordPress, I'm wondering if that's something that you can use in a free WordPress account and then export the code to use in a different type of site.
So I'll let Matt answer the infographic question because that's out of my league. And to your other question, I've never actually tried that. So I mean that's a great question, and it would be a beautiful use of it. I would imagine yes, but I'm not really sure. So they have a 14-day free trial. I can tell you that.
The salesperson in me would say, visit our website, and we'll help you. But actually, yes, that is a service we offer. But I know Visually does have some tools, and there are some other ones. I just can't think of them off the top of my head. If you just remember to tweet me out, I can send you a couple of them. We have a list of them. We keep an eye on them. But yeah, that's another one. Pictochart. But again, you have to remember too, it's just what are you trying to do with it? Because a lot of the tools from what we found, the the way that they're presented is pretty basic, and so a lot of, there'll be a lot of the same kind of infographics that are out there just with just your data. And so if you want anything kind of personalized or whatever, none of these tools are really going to do that for you. But again, it's just, do you have the money to invest or not? And I understand that, so.
Well, I sense a lunch murmur in the room, so I will cut it off. Thank you, Matt and Kristy. Awesome job.